Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a 900-year-old philosophy that might just diagnose and, more importantly, solve your modern exhaustion. If you've been feeling stressed, confused, lonely, or just kind of feeling like there's a general loss of purpose in your life, like something fundamental is missing, well, trust me, you're not alone. But the solution might actually come from a source you've probably never even heard of. We're looking at the brilliant 12th century philosopher Shihab al-Din Yahya Suhrawardi. He essentially attempted to unite Greek philosophy, Persian wisdom, Islamic spirituality, and some seriously profound insights about human consciousness into one grand vision. So I want you to imagine something pretty radical for a moment. Imagine if everything you experience, the people around you, the stars in the sky, your passing thoughts, your heavy emotions, and yeah, even your deepest suffering, what if they were all actually different degrees of literal light? I don't mean metaphorically. I'm not being poetic here. I mean literally, the fabric of reality itself. If reality is light, then what if anxiety is just a form of darkness? What if it's simply a lack of illumination? And on the flip side, what if wisdom is pure brightness? What if every single human being, and yes, that absolutely includes you, is essentially a lamp trying to remember the brilliant sun from which it came? Suhrawardi discovered this nearly 900 years ago, and I'm telling you his ideas are going to completely shift how you view your own mind.
Section 1. The illusion of knowledge, or why information isn't transformation. Let's get into it.
You know, back in Suhrawardi's time, most philosophers just endlessly debated using complex logic and arguments. But he realized a really crucial difference between knowing something and actually experiencing it. Think about it. You can study fire in a book forever, right? You can memorize all the chemical equations and read every theory about combustion. But until you actually stand next to a fire and feel its warmth directly on your skin, you don't truly know what fire is. Suhrawardi said reality is exactly like this. You can think about the truth or you can experience it directly. He actually called his philosophy illumination because truth isn't just something you learn, it's something you see. And wow, does this bring us directly to the great dilemma of our time? Today, we're living right in the thick of the information age. We literally have more info at our fingertips than any generation in human history. Just endless content, opinions, courses, advice, you name it. Yet, we're profoundly confused. We watch hundreds of videos on happiness. We read dozens of books on productivity, and somehow we still feel completely lost. Why? Because knowing is not the same thing as seeing. Information is definitely not transformation. Real wisdom only comes from illumination, from direct insight and actually seeing reality clearly. Moving on to section 2. Reality is literally light, the cosmic dimmer switch. Okay, this brings us to Suhrawardi's most mind-bending idea. It's a concept that completely redefines the universe. According to him, everything that exists is made of different degrees of light. He believed that at the absolute highest level is the infinite light of lights, the absolute source, ultimate reality, or God. From this infinite source, all other levels of existence emerge. Try picturing reality as a giant cosmic dimmer switch. At the absolute center, kind of like the sun, it's brilliant and infinite. But as that light travels outward, it gets dimmer. Shadows start to appear. Darkness creeps in. So the closer something is to the source, the more luminous it becomes. The farther away, the dimmer it gets, casting shadows. Yet, and this is key, absolutely everything contains at least some degree of light.
Now, it is incredibly fascinating how our own human language accidentally reveals this profound truth. We aren't just talking about physical light here. Light is awareness. It's consciousness. It's presence. Just think about the everyday phrases we use. When you finally understand a complex concept, what do you say? Oh, I see. When your confusion ends, the light bulb went off. When someone gains deep wisdom, we literally say they are enlightened. For thousands of years, light has been the ultimate symbol for consciousness. Suhrawardi just took this intuitive insight to its absolute ultimate conclusion.
Section 3. The modern cave of shadows, or spiritually running on empty. Let's see how this applies to us. When applying this ancient wisdom to our modern lives, Suhrawardi wouldn't look at our overwhelming exhaustion and feeling of being trapped as just a psychological problem. He'd actually call it a form of darkness. But here's the thing. Darkness isn't evil. Darkness is just forgetfulness. It's losing connection to your inner light. Think of your smartphone when the battery hits 1%. What happens? The screen dims, the functions start failing, doing anything becomes incredibly difficult, right? Well, this is exactly how most people are operating spiritually today. We are literally walking around on 1% battery, utterly disconnected from the source. And then we sit around wondering why daily life feels so completely exhausting.
You know, the philosopher Plato famously talked about the allegory of the cave, where people sat staring at shadows on a wall, totally believing those shadows were reality. Suhrawardi actually loved this insight. And if he were alive today, he'd undoubtedly point out our new digital cave, the endless scrolling, the constant notifications, comparison culture, consumerism. We literally spend our hours staring at the shadows of likes, comments, and external validation, completely ignoring our own inner light. It's an entire civilization that is just fundamentally distracted.
And honestly, this perfectly explains why success so often fails to satisfy us. People get the money, they buy the beautiful house, they build up all this status, and yet they still feel utterly empty inside. Why is that? Because you simply cannot replace inner illumination with external achievement. Imagine decorating a lamp but never actually plugging it in. Sure, it looks absolutely beautiful on the outside, but it remains completely dark. We spend our entire lives polishing a beautiful lamp without ever taking the time to learn how to ignite it. There's this ancient story I love about a king who loses his memory. Forgetting he's a king, he starts living as a beggar. He suffers terribly, he struggles, he fears, and he's constantly competing with other beggars for scraps. Then one day, someone comes along and reminds him, "Hey, you are not a beggar, you are a king." And immediately, his suffering ends. Now, nothing in his external world changed right away, yet absolutely everything changed. His suffering came entirely from a case of mistaken identity. Suhrawardi argues that humanity suffers from the exact same condition. We just forget that we are light. And what's genuinely fascinating about all this is how it seamlessly parallels modern neuroscience. Science tells us that our brain is constantly filtering reality. We don't see the world directly. Instead, we see a constructed, perceived version of it. Well, Suhrawardi said the exact same thing centuries ago. Awareness itself determines what becomes visible to you. It confirms both ancient wisdom and modern science. The clearer your consciousness becomes, the clearer your actual world becomes. Literally, change your awareness and you change your reality.
All right, moving to section 4, returning to the light, the 5-step blueprint.
So, how do we actually stop acting like beggars and remember our true nature? How do we reconnect with this incredible source of light? Well, Suhrawardi offers a really clear blueprint. Step 1 is to reduce noise. Light only becomes visible when the distractions decrease, so you absolutely have to create moments of silence. Step 2, cultivate awareness. Simply observe your thoughts and emotions. The observer is always closer to the light than the thought being observed. Step 3 is seek direct experience. Don't just read about peace. Sit down and actually experience peace. You have to live the wisdom instead of just learning it. Now, step 4 requires us to clean the inner mirror. Ancient traditions often describe the human heart as a mirror that's meant to reflect light. But emotions like anger, greed, jealousy, resentment, and fear, they act like this thick, grimy dust covering your mirror. The light inside you never actually disappears, it simply becomes obscured by all this dust. So to clean it, you have to practice things like forgiveness, compassion, and gratitude. And finally, step 5 reveals this beautiful, almost paradoxical truth about the nature of light. Serve others. One of the absolute fastest ways to increase your own light is to help someone else's light shine. Just think about it visually for a second. A candle loses absolutely nothing by lighting another candle. In fact, by giving its light away, the entire room becomes brighter for everyone. How amazing is that? That brings us to section 5, the ultimate insight: stop fighting the darkness. Listen, if you only take away one thing from this entire explainer, let it be this. Darkness is not some independent evil force. Darkness is merely the absence of light. Ignorance is just the absence of understanding. Fear is simply the absence of clarity. Most people spend their entire lives endlessly fighting the darkness within them. But Suhrawardi suggests something radically different. He says, stop fighting the darkness. You literally cannot punch the dark out of a room. All you have to do is simply increase the light, and the darkness naturally, effortlessly disappears.
This philosophy teaches us that maybe, just maybe, the purpose of life isn't to hustle and constantly try to become something new. Maybe it is simply to remember something. To remember the light that is already present within you right now. The world doesn't need more endless data, more hot takes, or more information. It desperately needs more awakened human beings who remember the source from which they came. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought. The human journey has pretty much always been the same, moving from confusion to understanding, from forgetting to remembering, and from sleeping to awakening. But that journey entirely begins within you. So the real question is, will you stay distracted in the cave of shadows, or are you ready to finally step out, turn on the light, and remember who you really are?